Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer and tackle a very real, honestly, very common challenge. How do we actually define how people learn and acquire new skills? I mean, we've all sat through those endless, mind-numbing corporate training modules that feel totally disconnected from reality, right? We spend so much time and energy designing programs and mentoring our teams, but how do we actually know if any of it is working? Well, today we're focusing on the science of measurable objectives and how a very specific approach to learning can literally transform the way you teach, train, and assess.
So let me ask you this. How do you measure understanding? We say it all the time, don't we? I want my team to understand the new software, or I want my students to understand history. But I really want to challenge you right out of the gate to think about how you actually measure that invisible concept. Because understanding, well, it happens entirely inside the mind. You can't see it, you can't touch it, and you definitely can't put it on a performance review with any kind of real objectivity. So if we want to be effective educators and trainers, we need a much better framework.
To solve this problem, we're going to explore a concept called behaviorism. In this explainer, we'll quickly cover defining observable behavior, the science behind behaviorism, crafting measurable learning objectives, reinforcement, practice, and feedback, and finally, modern digital learning.
Let's start with Section 1, defining observable behavior. Think of a student learning their multiplication tables. At first, they might really struggle. You ask them what 6 times 7 is, and they just freeze up. But then they practice. You give them some feedback. They try again. Over time, that transition from struggling to answering quickly and accurately becomes super apparent. You don't have to guess if their brain has rewired itself, right? Because their ability to give you the correct answer on demand is observable evidence that learning has actually occurred. This formula, struggle, practice, feedback, resulting in improvement, that is the physical manifestation of learning.
And this brings us directly to one of the most influential theories of learning out there, behaviorism. Basically, behaviorism focuses on learning as a lasting change in observable behavior. Rather than trying to guess what's happening inside someone's head, behaviorism asks a purely practical question. What can they physically demonstrate? Like, what can the learner actually do after instruction that they couldn't do before? It just totally takes the guesswork out of the equation.
Let's look at a quick comparison that perfectly illustrates the difference between an unmeasurable goal and an observable outcome. Take a really vague objective like, the learner will understand accounting software. I mean, how do you even measure that? But contrast that with, the learner will generate a financial report using the accounting software. Now that is an objective you can actually test. You can sit the learner at a computer and literally watch them either successfully generate the report or fail to do so. It's entirely observable.
Moving right along to Section 2, the science behind behaviorism. Psychologists in the early 20th century really wanted to make learning objective, moving away from subjective feelings and thoughts. It all kicked off around 1913 when John B. Watson argued that psychology had to focus on observable behavior to be truly scientific. Then, in the 1920s, Ivan Pavlov did his famous experiments with dogs, proving classical conditioning, basically showing that behavior can be learned through associations with stimuli. And finally, in the 1930s, B.F. Skinner expanded all of this into operant conditioning, proving that behavior is directly influenced by its consequences. Simply put, if a behavior is followed by a desirable consequence, it's going to happen again.
The core mechanism of behaviorism is actually incredibly elegant. It relies entirely on this simple 3-step sequence. Step 1 is the stimulus. This is something in the environment that prompts the learner to act. Step 2 is the response. That's the learner's actual observable behavior in reaction to the stimulus. And step 3 is the consequence, what happens immediately after the response, which dictates whether the learner will ever repeat that behavior in the future.
Let's look at how this sequence plays out in a scenario we're all pretty familiar with. Taking an online quiz. The question popping up on your screen? That's your stimulus. It's prompting you to do something. You clicking on option B is your response. And that giant green check mark that says correct? That's the consequence. If a learner selects the right answer and gets immediate positive feedback, that specific response is highly reinforced and super likely to happen again.
All right, Section 3, crafting measurable learning objectives.
Let's see how just shifting our language transforms the entire learning experience. A fuzzy goal might be, understand performance management. Sure, it sounds nice, but honestly, it's pretty useless for an instructor. By shifting that to an action goal, we get, identify the 4 stages of the performance management cycle. By doing this, we've created an objective that is instantly easier to measure and assess. Bottom line, you either can identify the 4 stages or you can't.
This is exactly why instructional designers rely heavily on specific action verbs. It guarantees that the learning outcomes can actually be witnessed. Words like define, identify, list, select, calculate, demonstrate, and perform. When you use these verbs in your learning objectives, you are setting up a very clear finish line. You aren't just asking the learner to know something vaguely, you're asking them to show you that they know it through a physical, measurable action.
So, this brings us to what I call the golden rule. Objectives must clearly connect instruction, practice, and assessment. Think about it. If you expect learners to perform a task, let's say calculate a budget, your instruction has to teach them how to calculate it. Your practice exercises must give them the exact opportunities to try calculating it, and your final assessment must test their ability to actually calculate it. The objective is that golden thread tying the whole shebang together.
Section 4. Reinforcement, Practice, and Feedback.
Okay, let's clear something up that people constantly get mixed up. The difference between negative reinforcement and punishment. Positive reinforcement adds something desirable, like praise or points, to increase a behavior. Negative reinforcement removes an unpleasant condition, but still with the goal to increase a behavior. Think of that annoying dinging sound your car makes until you buckle your seatbelt. It removes the annoying sound to increase the behavior of buckling up. Punishment, on the other hand, applies an unpleasant consequence specifically to decrease a behavior. In the world of learning, we really want to lean heavily into positive reinforcement.
Behaviorism heavily emphasizes repetition, practice, and immediate feedback to really cement the association between the stimulus and the correct response. Just think about learning a new language using flashcards. The foreign word on the card is the stimulus. You racking your brain trying to remember the translation is the response, and flipping the card over to see if you were right, that's the immediate feedback. This fast, repeated loop is what gradually and permanently builds up your accuracy.
Because of this underlying science, several really proven instructional strategies have emerged. Drill and practice helps build that crucial muscle memory. Practice testing lets learners retrieve information, which physically strengthens neural pathways. Programmed instruction breaks massively complex topics into tiny, manageable little steps. And mastery learning basically ensures you don't even move on to Chapter 2 until you've proven you've totally mastered Chapter 1. These strategies are absolute game changers when fluency, consistency, and accuracy are your ultimate goals.
Finally, Section 5. Modern Digital Learning.
You might think behaviorism is just old-school psychology, but let's take a look at the modern concept of gamification. Points, badges, leaderboards, leveling up. Every single time a learning management platform, a language app, or your fitness tracker gives you an achievement badge or a score, it is directly applying behaviorist reinforcement at scale. It's serving as a digital consequence to a digital response, designed entirely to keep you engaging with the software. It's quite literally operant conditioning right in the palm of your hand.
This science is absolutely perfect for basic procedural skills where automatic responses and high precision are required. If you are teaching medical terminology, math formulas, critical safety procedures in a warehouse, basic software navigation, or language pronunciation, behaviorism is for sure your best friend. You want learners to have automatic, flawless responses in these areas, and repetition paired with reinforcement is exactly how you get them there.
Now, to be totally fair, it is absolutely vital to acknowledge the limitations here. Behaviorism isn't a silver bullet. A learner might correctly answer a multiple-choice question through sheer memorization without actually grasping the underlying why of it all. So for complex problem-solving, deep reflection, or creativity, we really must combine behaviorism with other cognitive and social learning theories. Think of it like this. Behaviorism builds the foundation. Other theories build the house. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this defining quote. What should the learner be able to do after the learning experience, and how will we know that they can do it? This is the ultimate question for literally any educator, manager, or trainer designing a new module. If you can't answer this question with clear, observable actions, your training is, well, it's likely going to miss the mark.
So I'll leave you with this final challenge. The very next time you sit down to teach someone a skill, or you write a training manual for your team, challenge yourself to completely eliminate the word understand. Just scrap it. Focus purely on what you can see. How will you rewrite your next learning goal to make it truly observable? Because when you start focusing on the science of measurable objectives, you don't just hope people are learning, you actually know they are.